watercolor leaves with Ms. Boley. So the materials that you'll need are watercolor paper, or you can use your visual journal for this. The visual journals have pretty decent paper in them, and they're able to have watercolor paint used on them. A pencil, watercolor paints, a brush, a cup of water, and then after we've let our painting dry, we will use a marker or pen to outline it if you have it. And it's great to glue or tape your painting into your visual journal. That way you'll have it and it won't get lost. So glue or tape is nice to have. And we're going to need some leaves to look at. And that is it. So why are we doing this? Well, we're trying to build our eyes of an artist, or develop the eyes of an artist. So we want to observe and document natural forms such as those that we see on leaves. We are going to continue to practice our contour drawing skills. And remember, with contour drawing, we are using the eyes of an artist to look very closely at the forms and document as much detail as possible. And we're also going to have fun with it. We're going to add some experimentation with watercolor. So some of us have used watercolor a lot and some of us have not. And so this will teach us one technique that's kind of a really foundational technique for watercolor painting. Okay, so the technique that we're focusing on is called wet on wet technique. The wet on wet technique is when you apply paint to wet paper or to other wet areas of paint, like you're seeing here. Going to be using some watercolor paper for this. I've grabbed a few brushes of different shapes and sizes. I'm actually just going to use one medium-sized brush. If you don't have watercolor paper, you're welcome to use your visual journal. Most of the visual journals are mixed media paper, and so they are able to handle having watercolor paint on them. But I just wanted to do watercolor paper for this one for myself. So use what you have available, okay? I'm also gonna grab a cup of water so that I can use that with my watercolor paints. And I have collected some leaves. I have them right there beside me to look at. If you're not able to collect leaves, I can provide some images of leaves in Google Slides for you. So we've already learned about contour drawing. Remember, we're using our eye to follow along the contour of the object that we're trying to draw. We're drawing slowly and intentionally and documenting as many details as possible. Leaves are a really great thing to draw a contour drawing of because they have so many little details, especially those like the zigzaggy line along the edge of this leaf that I'm looking at here. It's amazing. And all the different veins in the leaf as well. So really use your eyes of an artist and document while your eye is kind of moving along with your hand. Okay, so I'm going to speed up the video, but you can see how slowly I am drawing. So this is regular time, drawing very slowly. And I'm not gonna worry about erasing anything. I will maybe make one change later on, but I'm not going to draw one line and then erase it, draw one line and then erase it. I'm just gonna go with it, even if it's not the proper proportions. All right, let's speed up. But remember, when you're drawing, you're doing slow and intentional. All right, so I've drawn one leaf and I'm gonna draw 2 or 3 leaves. So I grab my next one and I'll place it there on my paper so I can see it really well. And I'll choose a place to start, and then I'll just start with moving my eye along down this time I'm going on the left edge of the leaf. And again, if my drawing isn't in proper proportions, I'm not going to care too much about it right now. I'm just going to keep going because that's what contour drawings are for. So draw 1 to 2 contour drawings with pencil on your paper, and then we'll meet back up when we're done that. All done. Okay, so I'm going to put my leaves over to the side and I'm going to start working with my watercolors now. So I'm wetting my brush, and then I'm not going to use paint right now. I'm just going to use water. And I'm going to paint within the contour line of the leaf that I just drew. So I'm just painting with water, and I'm trying, it's really difficult, but I'm trying my best to stay kind of in the lines that I drew and go all the way up to the edge of the leaf, because I'm then going to use the wet on wet technique. And so yeah, I wanted to fill the full leaf all the way up to the edges. All right, so once you have the whole leaf kind of covered with water, you're going to use some paint. So I'm not making a wash or anything like that. I'm just going to dip right into my palette and then go ahead and put the wet paint on top of the wet water. And you'll see it's going to spread out. Let's see if we can zoom in. All right, so you can see when I tap my brush loaded with paint onto the water, it's going to do that wonderful wet on wet effect. And it's going to blend in towards the center of the leaf. Now I'm going to use another color. So I'm going to try yellow, and I'm not trying to copy the actual color of the leaf. I'm just choosing colors that are kind of what I would see in autumn leaves. All right, so now I'm going to let that dry. You don't want to go too overboard with the water, because if you do, the surface tension of the water could break and then the water can spill out into other areas of your page. If that happens, it's all good, but just something to think about. We don't want to overload the paper with water. So I'm going to let that first leaf dry, and I'm going to start working on my second one. So same technique, I'll paint it with water first, and then I will add the paint on top. So let's meet back up after we've done our 2 to 3 leaves, and we'll have to let them dry. It will take probably a couple of hours for them to dry. Okay. So I've been letting my paint dry. It's still not dry. It's still quite wet on the edges where you see the darker colors. What I'm going to do is a little bit of kind of wet on wet paint. It's still wet paint. And I'm just going to add some little dots, kind of as like little details, because I can see that on that one particular leaf has some little dots. So I just thought it would be kind of cool to do those in the center of the leaf, and those are going to, because I'm doing them on wet paint, they're going to blend outwards and not look so much like polka dots. They'll just sort of look like texture on the leaf. So I'm going to do that. So you can try out that, or try out a different type of brush stroke. If you're not going to do dots, could be some other type of brush stroke to sort of add some interest to the leaf, document some of the texture on it. This leaf, I'm just kind of doing a back and forth motion with my brush, with still a little bit more paint on top of the already wet area. But I have been letting it dry for a little bit, so it's not a full puddle of water anymore. And now we're gonna let it dry completely so we can go over our outline with a Sharpie. So I have let these guys dry completely, and I have a third leaf that I did off camera. And I'm gonna go ahead and use my Sharpie, my fine tip, and my extra fine tip. Just use what you have available. And I'm gonna go around the outline and other contour lines that I drew originally with pencil. And now that I've got those outlines done, I can either glue or tape my artwork into my visual journal, or if you did it in your visual journal already, then you don't need to do this step. Okay, and we can add a date, and if you want to, you can add a title to your visual journal page. You could say like autumn leaves or leaf paintings. And I'm also going to add labels to the ones that I do know what kind of leaf they are. I'm going to say what kind of tree it's from. All right, awesome work. I can't wait to see your leaf paintings. Remember, you're supposed to do a contour drawing in pencil and then use the wet on wet watercolor technique, and then let it dry, outline, and label. Thanks so much for watching.